coming to the September session of ABCD-OpenScholar. As usual, we are going to be recording these sessions so then we can just audio recording them and screen recording so we can provide this detail later to people who weren't able to make the meeting. But today we are talking about importing content and talking about our platform changes and how we roll out releases and things like that. As usual, I'll tell you about how you can get help with OpenScholar if you're new to the platform or you don't know about how to get help. We've got 6 areas where you can get help. We've got the community forum, so this is a website where you can post questions, suggest ideas, vote for other features that you might like. Dorian and Dan are here to talk a lot about community today. We've got our documentation website. This is a place where we often, Joe and I, write content based on questions we get asked from our users, things like that. It's very robust, lots of different information on widgets and apps, how to do certain things. Then we've got our roadmap. Our roadmap goes in line with our community forum, and we'll talk more about that in a bit. We've got platform trainings, so if you're on OpenScholar and you have not been to a platform training, I highly recommend it. We offer group-based or department-based training every 2 weeks, and then personal-based or individual or scholar site building once a month. And then always, if you are stuck after you've tried these different items, we've got the help desk support that you can send an email in. And before we get started, I have one announcement. There is, and let me just pull open my reminder, we've got some room in one of our workshops on Wednesday, October 1st. It's the web writing workshop. It's a 2-hour free session, and Nalaj McCoy, she's in the room, she does this session, so if you have not been to the web writing workshop, you should definitely check it out, and you can find it on the HWP website. So with that, I guess I'll kick it over to Joe, or is that right, Joe? Or Eric. Great.
Thanks, Bree. Hi guys, I'm Eric. I'm a project manager with HWP. If you have not met me yet, thanks all for coming. So the first type of content importing I'm going to discuss is using CSV files to import content. So this is actually a feature that's been in the platform for quite a while, but we haven't covered it yet at ABCD. And the fact is that it's a little bit complicated. It's really helpful if you do have tons of content like news, events, faculty profiles that you need to import. And so it's definitely an advantage over doing it manually, but there are a number of steps, there are a number of sort of things to look out for. So it's not this fully just automated, click a button kind of thing. So I want to go through some of those things to look out for, the differences between importing some types of content versus others, and basically give you guys just tips on being able to make use of this feature. So by default, it's enabled. So the way you access it is by going on the main admin menu to content, and then you can see on the left hand it says add link or page. That's because in this case I only had like the link content, the link app turned on. But then if you take a look all the way on the right, it also gives you the option to import it. So if I were on this website to turn on the news app, then obviously under add, you'd end up seeing news, but also under import, you'd see news as well. So you don't have to actually do anything additional in order to turn on the importing capability. So if I were to click on, in this case, import link, then what I would see is this next screen. So in this case, the only option to import link content is via CSV file. There are sometimes other options. For example, for events, you can upload like an iCal format file, so that's a different way of importing content. I'm not going to cover that today, just covering the CSV options, but you may have to select the actual file format that you want to import. And so assuming that you select CSV, then you'll get this download a template link. And that's really the place to start. It's where I start every single time I'm going to import some content, because what that'll do is it'll download a CSV file to your computer that has the necessary column headers and actually has a single row as well of just example data, so it can really provide a good guide for what kind of content it's looking for to go into each column. And so here's an example of one of those template files. Again, this is for the link content type. So you can see columns A, B, and C. A is the title of the link. B is whatever the descriptive text is that you want to add to it. If you've use the link content type. And then C, the URL, is basically where the link is going to point to. So those, in this case, are the 3 required columns. The next 3 are actually on, I think, every single other type of content as well, but are not required. So the files column will be for any file attachments that you want to add to that post. The created date is the date that it'll end up saying that the post was actually created. So most of the time, you're probably not going to need to bother to change that. It's going to be fine just to leave it as January 1st, 2014. But if there are times that you actually want to change when it was created, then that's a place where you'll want to modify that. And I think that kind of the use case that comes to mind mostly for me is for blog posts. Blog posts tend to be attached to being published on a certain date. That's kind of a fundamental component of a blog post as far as the data goes. So in that case, you may want to actually modify the created date. And then path is also optional. Just like when you create a normal page in OpenScholar, it'll automatically create the actual URL for you. It'll kind of take words from the title, and build out the standard URL. The same thing will happen here, and so if you want, though, to change that, you want to force a specific type of URL to go along with it, then that's where you'd use column F for the path. But again, only columns A, B, and C are actually required, so if you were to leave D, E, and F blank in this case for uploading a link import file, that would be fine. If you were to leave A, B, or C blank, then it would give you an error message saying that you need to supply one of those values. And so again, the way you get this template file is as soon as you click to import it, you'll see this download a template link right here. And so if I was to then try to import news, I would get this link as well, but it would download the news template file. Yeah, question? Mm-hmm. So let's say that you uploaded like some people profiles and then you want to upload some new ones. Oh, so you would just add additional rows. Yeah, so you can add as many rows.
I think she means on the individual link online too. What if there are 2 files associated with the page title of Google? Like if there's this file.
I see. If you want to upload 2 files as attachments to this, so I'm about to get to that. That's an excellent question. I think, in fact, on this screen I discuss it. So on this screen, there are just a few things that I want to point out for the formats of different columns. Obviously, for stuff like title, that's just basic text, so there's nothing really to worry about there. But for a few other types of fields, here are some things to keep in mind. So the format in all date columns can be either in its standard Excel dates, or it can be text, like you see here. So this goes for this created date column here, as well on events. There's like a from and to date fields. Same thing there. It can be both standard Excel dates or it can be in this just kind of standard text format. Same thing with the news date as well. Any column that corresponds to a field that uses like the WYSIWYG editor when you're actually creating stuff manually on the platform, such as fields that go along with the body, or for profiles, it's like the bio field, you can actually include HTML in the import as well. So if you wanted to make some text bold when importing it, you could use like those strong tags if you know HTML. You don't have to use HTML. You can upload just plain text as well for those body fields. But if you did want to include HTML, that's acceptable. And so then this brings us to the question that you just asked. The files column on all content types can accept multiple values. So she had asked, if I actually need to attach 2 different files to this piece of link content, how would I do that? And the way you do that is by using this pipe character. It's not really useful character when it comes to just normal written English, so you guys may not be familiar with it, but it looks like this straight line. It's longer than a capital I or a lowercase l. You create it using shift backslash. So in fact, if any of you have your computers right now, you'll see that the backslash key right above it has just a vertical line. And so that's how you go about creating that pipe character, as it's called. So an example of how you would do that is right here. Here we've got the URL to the first file, and then you can see the pipe character there, and then the URL to the second file. Okay, and you don't want to include any space around the pipe character, just use the pipe character itself. And in case I didn't make it clear, that the way the file attachment works is that the file has to already be on the server in some place, so that when you upload it, it'll process that URL and then download, basically attach the file to it in that way. Yes.
So it has to be on the server, it can be on any server?
On any server, it has to, you have to provide a URL. Yeah. So it'll go and grab that file, make a copy of it on your site, and attach it to that piece of content. Okay. And so I think a place where this is more relevant, sometimes you may use file attachments. It's probably not the most common thing, but a place where this really becomes more relevant is in something like people profiles for, including a profile picture, news content that also has a field for like a news image. Both of those fields, they only accept one file. You're not going to be able to use like the pipe character to, specify multiple profile pictures. But that's a case where, probably a more common case where you'd want to provide a URL to the image in question. Yes?
So the files are already on the Scholar site, would you use a relative one, or would you still use the
So if it's already on your OpenScholar site, I guess one answer would be that no, you'd want to use the full URL. But my second answer to that is that I think what would probably happen, I haven't done it, linking to a file that's already on your site, but chances are it would probably make a copy of that file. That's my guess. It's not going to recognize, oh, this is actually a file on the site in question, so we can just use that same file. It's probably going to create a duplicate version of that file, is the truth.
Another question.
Yep.
Regarding the dates. So if you are using Excel dates, is there a disadvantage if it's just a text format? Like if you were to make a list that's sorted by post date, you choose the text version, is it going to be able to do the sorting, or would you need to stick to the
You mean once it's uploaded onto the platform?
Well, during the import, for the import, so say you want to somehow sort by whatever that is
In the
column.
Excel file itself.
Yeah, if it's just text, will it know that November 5th?
I guess that's more of an Excel question, and I think that right in that case, I don't think that Excel is going to recognize the text as a sortable date value. So you would probably then want to use the actual Excel format. But it might, right, but it might be in certain cases that this is a more useful thing for you to be typing in. I can imagine that, especially being the case if you've got maybe like an admin in your office, this might be a more recognizable format for them to enter it in for Excel. Again, the option is yours. All right, so you can also, when importing a file, when importing content, you can have it automatically tagged. This is something that's kind of like a hidden feature in that there's nothing in that template file you download that suggests that you can do this. So this is in fact, I didn't even know that you could do this until one of my developers, like a month later, told me about it. Basically, here again we have, so it looks like this is actually the template file for a news article, okay? So you can see there's some different fields. There's a redirect field, which you get when creating a news item. And again, here's the image field for uploading the news item image. And so here we have an additional column. This column in column I under news type, this is not included in the template file. The path column is the last one you'll see. So instead, in order to actually tag stuff, what you do is you put the vocabulary name in the header row, and then the tags in the rows corresponding to the actual posts. So in this case, we've got the vocabulary name news type, and then we're going to be tagging stuff either with press release or announcement, both of which are in the news type vocabulary. And then one other special thing about this is that the vocabulary news type doesn't even have to exist when I do this. Similarly, neither of these tags actually have to exist when I do this. If they don't exist, they'll just get created automatically when I upload it. If they already do exist, OpenScholar is smart enough not to create a new vocabulary name news type or new tags. It'll just use the ones that already exist. So if you end up with a ton of different tags for your news content, and they're not yet on the site, you can automatically create them just by tagging stuff in the import file. Similarly, if you, to how we can upload, can basically attach multiple files, you can also tag things with multiple items. Again, just using the pipe character. So as you can see here, I could do press release, pipe character, announcement in any one of these, and then that piece of content would actually get tagged with both of those. And then the last thing I'll say about this is that you can also tag stuff with tags from multiple vocabularies. So in this case, I'm just using this news type vocabulary. But let's say that I also had, I don't know, like a research area vocabulary that I also want to tag news items with. I would then put research area in the column header for J, and then similarly just put the tags going down there. So you can really tag stuff with as many vocabularies, as many types of tags from any of those vocabularies as you want. Any questions on that? Okay. So something I want to say about importing pages. Obviously, pages are like the most fundamental building block of your sites. The truth is that importing pages isn't really that valuable. Because if you have, generally, importing stuff is only worthwhile if you are importing a ton of content. Otherwise, if you only need to create like 10 news items, it may be easier just to do it straight up normally through the platform. So it really only matters if you're really creating, if you need to create a lot of content. When it comes to pages, chances are if you've got a ton of pages on your site, they're in some kind of hierarchy, right? It's not just like 1,000 pages all just at the top level of your navigation chain. Instead, you maybe have like 8 items on your main menu, and then within those, they all have subpages, and then some of those subpages might have subpages. Unfortunately, as things currently stand, we're not able to actually import any kind of hierarchical structure with those pages. So what that means is that if you were to go about importing, let's say, 100 pages, you'd probably import those 100 pages, and then you'd be stuck having to like find them all and manually put them into the site hierarchy that you want. So I've personally never had a use case where importing pages really made a whole lot of sense. Maybe you will, but because of that additional manual effort that you have to go to in order to actually order them appropriately, I tend to find that it's not actually that useful of a thing to do. Hopefully in the future we'll have a way of being able to say, oh, this should be a subpage of this other page, and then that would make importing pages more valuable. So a couple troubleshooting things. So sometimes getting a file to import successfully can require a bit of finesse. And what partly makes this difficult is that the error reporting when a file doesn't get imported successfully, the errors are often not super clear. So, for example, this first one I point out is that if you're getting your content by exporting it from an old database, it may end up containing special characters that will cause the import to fail. Special characters might look like, basically it's when you export stuff from an old database and bring it into Excel, there's weird sort of like background technology that goes around with characters that sometimes makes, a character from a different language that maybe is accented, like the ñ in Spanish. It might then not actually look correct when it gets into Excel. It might get represented by something like the pound symbol or some other kind of weird accented character. I don't know enough to explain exactly why it happens, but those can sometimes cause a file import to fail, having the presence of one of those weird characters. So again, unfortunately, in this case, it's not going to tell you exactly, oh, it was in this column, this row in this column where the problem resides. Instead, it's just going to give you some weird error that's not going to be very helpful. Again, that's something that hopefully we'll be able to improve upon in the future. But basically, the way I troubleshoot this, if I'm uploading a file with, say, like 300 rows and it fails, then what I'll do is I'll save a version of that file with maybe just the first 150 rows. And if that fails, then I'll maybe delete the next 75 rows and basically try to drill down until you actually find that row that's causing the problem. And then you can kind of go and inspect that row and see, if any of those weird characters exist. It's not a fun process, but it's kind of the best we can do when it comes to troubleshooting at the moment for something like that. One that's a bit easier to troubleshoot and which actually does provide a much more useful... Oh, yeah, question. Sorry.
Yeah, so by weird characters, do you actually mean like sort of any non-ASCII character? So anything, say Greek, Russian, this is all going to make it wrong?
So I'm not totally clear on that. It can accept accented characters. I'm really not sure. Like, sometimes something will look like, like a long dash, um, but causes a problem. And if I just replace it with like my own long dash, it'll work. So it seems like there's sometimes like these small like technology differences behind the characters that looks like the right character, but it isn't. I'm sorry, I can't be.
CSV files have these limitations, right? I import things from them all the time, and there's lots of things that get translated, so it's not forgiving.
I find the Microsoft Office has its own formatting code underlying, and that's oftentimes will fail when I try to import. So if it's just a ASCII character, or if it's on a proprietary formatted special character, it probably will import.
There is on the initial page, the input page, there's that little UT8F selection bit.
Yep. Yeah, that's right. And so I guess kind of what I'm talking about when I talk about this sort of technology underlying the actual characters is that goes to something called sort of text encoding. And so thank you for pointing this out. Again, I can't really get into what text encoding is. It seems like something that's like overly complicated they're just letters. Like who cares? But apparently this is some really tricky thing, and like from one server to the next, it's crazy.
Probably more a problem with Microsoft proprietary encoding of certain symbols.
Yeah.
Than actual, so because it looks like you support
You can choose
which is great.
So maybe choosing a different encoding. I've never actually tried that, and I should. Maybe choosing a different encoding
You can
will.
at least explore the
could
different
solve it.
types, and you can see
Yeah.
how the original file came to you, and it'll give you a clue as to what the troublemaker is.
And if you
Well-
use it like Excel, you can set the encoding of that document. Right? When you're
Okay.
exporting it as a CSV,
Okay.
you'll be able to set it. By default, it's probably going to be like it'll call it Latin 1, it'll call it like Windows something or other.
So I appreciate. It sounds like some of you guys probably know more about this encoding stuff than I do. As you try to use this feature and you explore perhaps changing the encoding here or saving it with a different encoding in Excel or something like that, if you guys could post in community whatever troubleshooting techniques you took that either worked or didn't work, that'd be great, and we can maybe build up a better knowledge base around how to solve some of these wonky issues. Yeah.
Different question, it sounds like it's an all or nothing, if the import fails, it doesn't import part of the file, is that correct?
No. And I think that should be how it is. I think it should be that it doesn't. So the question is that when an import fails, does the entire thing fail and no content gets imported, or does some content get imported but then it just stops importing where it runs into the error? And the answer is that it's the latter. That content does actually get imported. It does not tell you this. It just gives you an error message and it makes you think everything went wrong, but it has actually imported some content. So I think I actually created a ticket in the community requesting that not be the case. That if it fails, it just fail entirely, because what you're going to do is you're going to then re-import the whole file, right? And you don't want to end up with duplicate content. But unfortunately, it does import up to a certain row. And it just occurs to me though that maybe that's a helpful way of being able to identify where the error lies. Is that you can maybe see through that. I'm not sure that it always imports in the exact order though. Like if you go to the content screen and it tends to show you like most recently updated content, I'm not sure that that's always going to be in the same order as what was in your file. So I don't know how easy it'll be just to use what's the last thing that was updated as, oh, that's the last row. But that's worth exploring. Maybe that could really help narrow down where the error is. But more broadly, to address the fact that it does import content even when there's an error, what I will generally do is I won't worry about deleting that content in between import attempts. I'll just keep trying to import it, then do little fixes, import it again until I've actually got it fully working, and then I'll go back and delete all that content that I had uploaded previously in the failed attempts, and then just do one final import once I know it's going to work correctly. So that's a great question.
I don't think Excel actually does support criteria we tap on this a while ago,
Okay.
I always had to work around what was the open source
Open Office.
Yeah, or in Google.
Okay.
Sheets.
That's the
Anyway.
best luck with Google. If I have an error with my Excel sheet, I just copy paste it into a Google
Okay.
sheet, and that's the one thing that's worked. And I spent a lot of hours struggling to do that.
So maybe that's another troubleshooting technique. That's great, and maybe I'll actually. So the troubleshooting technique is rather than perhaps opening your CSV file in Microsoft Office in Excel, maybe upload it to like Google Docs. And so if you need to upload it to Google Docs and then assemble it in Google Docs will then let you export it as a CSV file. And so then essentially you're taking a CSV file created by Google Drive or Google Docs and uploading that into OpenScholar. That's great. I'm going to give that a shot. Again, as you guys try these different things, please do post in community so we can, make these sort of what can sometimes be wild goose chases on fixing these errors become a bit simpler. So then the other issue that I wanted to raise, and this is a known bug and will hopefully get fixed soon, is that sometimes, and it's not all the time, but sometimes you'll get an error saying that this path column doesn't exist. Again, the value here is optional. You don't have to fill that in, but the error is actually telling you that the column itself doesn't exist at all. Even if it does. It's just literally, for some reason, missing the fact that you have a header here for path. There is a workaround. I've included the link on the slide. I've included the link here on the slide to a ticketing community that I created about this. The workaround is basically just add an additional column after path. So even if I didn't want to create a new vocabulary and tag the content, I could just put in here like temporary and then leave the whole column blank. What'll happen is it'll actually import successfully, and then I would just have a temporary vocabulary that I would just go and delete afterwards. So that's the workaround for that little issue. So that's it for me on CSV importing. Any other final questions? Yeah.
I was actually this last night, so I feel like the
Awesome.
universe is looking after me. Unfortunately, I did have a difficulty at the end of the process in that I got a message saying that the 167 records that I imported were imported, but it said that I had how did I put it? I had successfully created 167 nodes, but they did not show up on the page itself. What these were people. They
Okay.
were, profiles. So I'm not sure what the node bit was referring to.
So nodes is just a technical, the underlying software underneath OpenScholar is called Drupal. Node is just a technical term that Drupal uses. So node is a link, it is a person profile, it is a page. It's like any one of those types of content.
Okay.
So that's a standard, that is the success message you should get is a certain number, however many you're trying to import, nodes were imported correctly. That's a fine message. But you didn't see them actually appear. If you go to like the content section in your site, you don't see them there.
Explore with one of my colleagues.
Okay. Yeah, and I'd be happy out if you have your computer with you, or maybe happy to. Okay.
Homework.
Yeah, we'll work that. Anything else? Great. So I'm going to turn it over to Joe because we have the ability to also import publications, but not via CSV files, and so he's going to talk about that.
All right, hi everybody, I'm Joe, work at Harvard Web Publishing. So a different speaker for publications, and the reason why is it's a whole different world. There's all these different styles for display, and there's also all these different file formats, bibliographic file formats that exist that can be imported into OpenScholar. So here I've listed all the different types: BibTeX, EndNote, which is a program you can export if you have a publication EndNote, you can export to those two different formats. MARC is used by the Library of Congress. PubMed, a lot of faculty members have their papers and publications published there. And RAS is another format, Research Information Systems. And I put links to a couple of these because I know if someone asked me, I wanted to have a fallback because I don't know a heck of a lot about MARC and RAS. But BibTeX is actually the most commonly used in EndNote, I would say. Um, so real quickly, when you go into your publication section, you click Add New. You have the option of adding a new publication, but below that it'll say Import. Click Import, and you basically, it's pretty intuitive. You select your file type, and then you choose your file. Now, usually with these files, you don't create them like CSVs. You usually generate them. So the publication may live, let's say, in your EndNote, or it may live on PubMed, and you want to display it on your OpenScholar site. So you just go to PubMed, look up the publication, and you'll see an option to actually export it. I've exported a PubMed ID list. It's just a file with a little number, a unique number. And you basically upload that file, and OpenScholar goes out and grabs that information and pulls it into your publications section. And it's an actual publication. You can tag it any way you want. You can display it any way you want. So within the settings for the Publications app, you can select which kind of file formats that you make available for export. So when you're viewing a list of publications, the public, if you have these three settings checked, can actually download the citation in one of these formats. So usually any repository has a way to export. Most repositories do. So this is where you can set that. So this is what it looks like on your site. This is just a clip from a test OpenScholar site. You can export the whole set of publications on a site if you go to the publications section and just click on export up here. Or you can go into an article itself and click export, and it offers these three file types, BibTeX, and the other two are EndNote formatted files. So that's it, very brief, but any questions on that? Great. Okay. So I'm going to turn it over to Dan and Dorian, and they're going to talk about our process improvements. Let's see.
Presenter view.
Presenter view.
Great. So I'm Dorian Freeman. I'm the user experience lead for Harvard Web Publishing, and this is Dan Cabral. He's what's your official title? Designer, developer.
Yeah, UI, UX, themer, designer, developer.
Right. And he's an IQSS as well as HWP. We thought we would take a few minutes to kind of let you see under the hood and see what our process is for improving OpenScholar, and kind of let you know some of the things that are going on right now. We were asked a couple months ago to play the role of product managers for OpenScholar, and our focus has been and will continue to be on making our communication better, not only internally but also making sure you know where this, the status of your issues as you present them to us in whatever way you do. Also making sure that our planning for each release is a little bit more formalized, and we'll talk a little bit about that as well. And then just being able to measure and report on how we're doing, whether we really are improving or not. So Dan and I actually still have our regular jobs. So we have a certain percentage of our time that we spend doing product management as well.
So previously, any contact you've probably had with OpenScholar has been most likely directly with the development team. Now, that initial point of contact will be with one of us. Some of the things we'll be doing will be gathering details about bugs and any feature requests that come in through community. We'll follow up with you. We need more details or examples. One of the things that we're trying to improve is the response rate in community. You know, we're doing our best to reply to tickets in a timely manner, and continue to follow up with them. And if you don't feel that's being done, please let us know. We get a very high number of tickets that come in, and as you can see, we're kind of limited in terms of resources. Also, we have we've sort of, HWP, we've moved to HipChat, which is a chat vehicle used by, I guess, many groups across Harvard. And we have a large group chat that anyone can not only view but join. And as discussions carry on in this chat room, we monitor it on a somewhat regular basis, and we'll point people to issues in community that are related to what's being discussed.
So for planning, it's always been sort of a big mystery for people, I think, as to how we decide what we actually work on to improve the platform. Obviously, bugs are always going to take precedence, because if something's broken, we really need to fix it. What we've done is we've come up with a ranking methodology that we use, and I'll talk a little bit about that. We also have the roadmap that I think Bree referred to earlier, the online view of all of the issues that we're working on and what stage they're in. So Dan and I, we have the responsibility to make sure that they are in the right categories and that they're being prioritized appropriately. And also that the language is more clear. We found in the past that a lot of times people just didn't understand what other people were talking about. So we try to translate as much as we can. And Richard Brandon now is the lead developer for the time being. We're working on hiring a new lead developer, lead architect. But at the moment, we're working with him as our technical expert, because we always need the input of, knowing whether something is feasible or not technically. So it's not just Dan and me. So for our ranking model, this is, some of you may be familiar with something similar to this, but basically these are the three things that we consider are the urgency, the user reaction, and the impact. And as you can see, there's a numeric value assigned to kind of each level of intensity for each of these. And at the end there with estimates, that's the part where we talk to Richard and the developers and make sure that we can actually work on something. We have the resources and it's not too complex for a particular release.
And something else we're trying to develop and put into place and into our process is measurement. Pretty standard in software development. It's something that was sort of done in the past, but we're looking to improve it and make it a little bit more clear and sophisticated, I suppose. Things like retrospectives, surveys, reaching out to users and ask them how we're doing. We're also running analytics on response times in community. We do that. Actually, we do this on a very regular basis now. We look to see how old tickets are, if they've been responded to, that kind of thing. Obviously, we can't always respond to every ticket in a timely manner, but we're definitely looking to improve that. And as Darya had mentioned, we're looking to, or we're trying to refine this process over time. And if for some reason you have an idea about how we can improve this based on past experiences, please let us know, because we're kind of working our way through this as well.
Which brings us to community. And how many people here actually go into community and post issues or? Wow, that's great. That's good. So we're really working hard to make it a place where you can feel comfortable submitting a bug report and knowing that you're going to get a response to it, and knowing that someone is paying attention to you and listening to you, as well as putting in requests for new features. And, a lot of times we'll get questions about, how do I import a CSV file, that kind of thing, and we'll answer questions like that as well. But the nature of online communities, online forums like this, really is that they need to go towards being self-sustaining. So it's the community itself that will help with answering questions and with growing the knowledge base that's being created out of this. And so we request that you help. And when you do have something that you would like to share with the rest of the community, to please post it. If you found a workaround for something that there's a bug issue in there for, it would be wonderful if you could contribute. If you see something that you think you can answer, even though you're not really sure if it's the right answer or not, please engage yourself in the conversation. And if it's not the right answer, of course, we'll weed it out. But we really do depend on everyone in our user community to help us out with this.
So back in June, we took the better part of a week and started to really dive into community and sort through literally all the tickets that were in there. And we merged tickets, removed duplicates, we were able to close a bunch that just hadn't been properly labeled in the past. And as a result, we discovered that we had 300 legitimate bugs. I mean, not all of them were serious, but there were bugs nonetheless, and they needed to be fixed. So, through discussions with upper management, it was decided that we really needed to get a handle on these 300 bugs. So, since June, all of our releases since June have been dedicated to fixing bugs, and fortunately, we haven't been able to work on any new features. This plan will go through mid-January, when at that point we'll be able to start to work on new features again. Totally standard in software development to carry a reasonable number of bugs. Obviously 300 is not reasonable, so we figure by mid-January we'll be down to a number that we can sort of handle. So does anyone have any questions about that? I mean, many of you probably weren't even aware of that. So.
Do you have a bell in the office? Did you ring when you saw me?
Yeah. That'd be kind of cool, actually. One comes off the board.
We have little rocket ships that we launch. Right.
So we had a rough idea as to how many were in there, but like I said, we took probably 3 or 4 days and really dug in and cleaned it up and came up with 300. So
there's like 1,600 tickets in community at the moment. And, obviously those are not all bugs.
Yeah, a lot of them are old and can be closed. They just weren't closed in the past or tagged properly or what have you. So,
right.
But anyway, as Dorian said, we need help from the community. If you see a routine question that someone posts, please feel free to answer it. It's as I've said, it's impossible for us to reply to every single ticket always.
So that's our plan.
Exactly. That's exactly what it was. Yeah,
That's
you probably
right.
noticed that week we were just like, is it still an issue?
Right. We had to do a little research.
I wonder if you might be able to, when I'm assuming that there's something in place in the system to track how long something has been out there.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Last replied to when it was open, all
Yeah.
that stuff.
Who replied to it?
There might be a way to build it in the system.
Notification.
Exactly. Just to let people know, we realize this has been
Right.
knocking for a while.
Right.
Please bear with us.
Mm-hmm.
Something like that. I find that in my own work with this sort of thing that people just so they feel acknowledged,
Right. Like we know this is still there.
It may not be burning for you, but for them,
Yep.
Right.
So if it's just acknowledged that they haven't been forgotten, because I have encountered people, I don't want to use that community thing because I just do stuff and I never
Goes into a black hole.
Right. Right.
That's what they feel, but
Yeah.
if there were a tickler to say,
Yep.
we know.
right? So, that whole, I can't trust community thing is what we're trying to get rid
Trying
of,
to work
right?
on it.
We're trying to build credibility in it, and actually make it a usable vehicle for everybody.
Yeah, and restore confidence in some cases.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, as someone who who uses this sort of thing with some regularity, I hate to hear people feeling almost resentful about it,
Right, like give
I
up
want
on it.
help, I want to do, I want to play in the mud with everyone else, and it's just like,
Right.
so anyway, it's trying to change that attitude, I guess.
Right.
But doing this sort of thing for some of your folks out in the field, and to see the two of you to like maybe do a little dog and pony show, I won't say this is dog, this is pony, but to take it out on the road and just, say, we're cognizant of what's going on.
Right.
And
So
here's
that's
how it works.
that's part of our communication
Good.
as well, right? Trying to make sure that people understand we are working on things, and
Great.
all right.
Thanks.
Do you want to mention the labeling system for folks on community? How things get labeled as
The categories.
acknowledged or
Oh,
under
the status.
consideration, the status.
Okay, yeah. So I don't know if you've noticed in some of your tickets, at the top of the ticket, there'll be a little notification saying what status it's in, and the status will vary depending on what type of issue it is that you have. So if you have submitted it as a question, well, sort of to back up a little bit, if you submitted it as a question, but we know it's really a bug, we're going to change it to be a problem. But anyway, if you submit it as a question, the next step in the status is answered, right? So there's not a whole lot of gray area with questions, either they're not answered or they are. With problems or bugs, so I think we have acknowledged is the first one. So we've read, and looked at your issue that you submitted. Then we have
I believe it's planned.
Planned.
Not planned.
not planned, right? Which we try not to use.
Yeah.
Yeah, under consideration,
Right.
things like that. So you'll see a little bit of information on what the status is of your ticket.
And it's a,
As
it's
you
a
have it in
yellow
there.
ribbon sort of toward the top of the page.
Yeah, yeah. And we've also tried to put everything into different categories. And you see those listed in community on the right-hand side and a column on the right. And for some reason, this version of Get Satisfaction, which is the framework that we're using, calls it products instead of categories. So you'll see things like search is one of them, publications is one of them. So if you go in there and you want to just see all the things about publications that are in community, you could just
Filter it.
take a look at that, click on it, and it will filter all publications things in there. So,
It's like our own taxonomy.
okay.
All right, so we will leave it there. Thank you, everyone who presented. But if people have questions and they want to stay around and get their site questions, it'd be great if you could identify yourselves. There's a number of us from HWP, or obviously help each other if you can or want to. But thanks again for coming. And then I believe, well, I don't know if we have next month set yet, so I won't say. We always change it last minute, but we'll be sending out a notice soon. But thank you.